What's up, NST heads? So this right here is part one of a two-part episode. The second part is out now as well, but this is the one you should listen to first. It is part one. So enjoy and make sure you tap into part two to finish the story. And without further ado, part one of two on the big truths and big lies about recycling.
I'm Manny.
I'm Noah.
This is Devin.
And this is No Such Thing, the show where we settle our dumb arguments and yours by actually doing the research. This week, does recycling even work?
If it turns out to be the case that this is not really doing anything, I'm going to be writing a very strongly worded letter.
There's no such thing. No such thing. No such thing. No such thing. No such thing.
So this week is a topic that we've been thinking about for a while, and a listener of ours also had the same question recently. Liz asked this: does recycling do anything, or does it just make us feel better when we put things into the bin and send it away? Mm-hmm. This is one of those topics that for years I've thought about, and every few months I feel like I would see a news story, a headline come by that said basically like the truth about recycling, and I hadn't read them until now.
Yeah.
Now we're doing a podcast about it. Mm-hmm. Before we get into that, I want to introduce our special guest co-host, and someone who actually worked on one of these pieces that I skipped over years ago is our fourth mic, Nayeema Raza.
Hi, guys. Nice to see you.
Mind introducing yourself?
I do a podcast called Smart Girl, Dumb Questions, which I'm realizing there's no such thing as a... Are
very
we like
aligned,
Eskimo sisters of podcast? Mm-hmm. But yes, years ago, I did write, or actually it was a video in the New York Times, The Great Recycling Con. I can't claim to be a recycling expert, and I can't say that has changed my behavior as much as it should have.
So don't spoil anything
Okay.
yet, but we'll get into that later.
Except for the word con. Edit that out.
That's okay. That's just, that's the New York Times editorializing. Yeah. To begin, how do we all feel about recycling? Devin?
How do we feel about it?
Yeah.
Like emotionally?
Yeah, I mean, do you enjoy it? Do you do it?
I don't
do you have any
enjoy-
guilt about not doing it?
No, I do it. I think I try to recycle too many things. I feel like most of the things I'm quote unquote recycling or putting in a recycling bin probably don't get recycled. But in my mind, I have to do it. Every once in a blue, I'll get like a plastic container from like a takeout place and throw it in the regular garbage.
Yeah.
And I feel, and I'm like, oh,
You just killed the
really
turtle.
shouldn't do that. But recycling is annoying. The most annoying thing about recycling is that the recycling can is never as big as the garbage can, but then the recycling stuff takes up so much more space.
All
so
the
it's
air.
so it's like a big inconvenience in like your home, right? And then you're like, why am I even like, does this even work?
And when you're sorting, how are you sorting? How much sorting are we doing? Just recycling bin for everything?
I have one recycling bin for everything. My apartment building does not sort anything, so I'm not sorting stuff because y'all don't sort stuff. So
that's where
when
I'm
you
at.
go downstairs to put into the bins, there's just recycling bins. There's supposed to be cardboard and paper. It's supposed to be separated from the plastic, but they don't do that. So I'm not doing it either.
Yeah.
Somebody will figure it out at some point.
Or not. Yeah.
You're
Or
job
not.
creating.
Exactly. I'm creating a sorter. But I try to fold up my boxes and do that sort of thing.
Okay.
I guess my overall emotion around recycling is I think it's fake. I don't think it's actually happening, but I do it because I feel like I don't want to be
You're not going to be the one who's
I'm
the
not,
problem.
Exactly. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. If down the line y'all aren't doing what y'all supposed to do, that's on you.
That's reasonable.
But we talked about my big recycling beef is weird recycling stuff, right? So I use Brita filters. I don't, mostly just because it's like a water container in my fridge. I don't believe it actually does anything. But I was looking at the filter.
You do a lot of things you think are and not doing anything.
We're living a fictitious life.
Exactly. But I was time to replace the filter. So I'm looking at the filter to be like, can I recycle this? And then I read the box and it's like, oh, you can recycle it if you put it in a box and ship it to wherever, and then we'll recycle it for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen. I have to
Completely
ship
defeats
something
the
so you can
purpose.
recycle it. Doesn't that offset the whole purpose of
Yeah.
recycling?
If not overcompensate. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
There's not like a drop-off location?
No, it's like
In New York City.
you gotta mail off my filter to get recycled. I think the carbon footprint of me mailing it offsets me recycling.
And they don't send you a new one or something. It's
No.
not like it's not like
no,
a
not
bottle
in exchange.
Yeah.
No.
Wow, what's
That's
in
a
it for
good
me?
idea.
Recycling.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
real.
okay, yeah.
What about when you have like takeout and you're rinsing the things to recycle them and you're using so much water and
Yep.
you're like, does this thing even recycle?
Yep.
And I got to rinse it because you can't put your dirty debris in the
And a
Right.
recycling.
That's what you
recycling.
always hear, yeah.
Yep. You gotta clean it up.
I was dealing with this just last night because Monday is garbage and recycling. And my basic view is that like I want to be a good citizen, but they make it too difficult. Every week I'm pulling up what thing goes into
wow.
what bag.
Yeah.
And so I was just found myself doing this last night, and I was like, "This is terrible. I don't want to do this anymore." The drop-off location for my Brita filter is the garbage can.
Yeah.
I'm not doing any extra work. beyond that. I think the government should make it a little bit easier.
But if they
my
gave
take.
you a replaceable filter for free, if you recycled yours, would you recycle it?
Like, would I ship it and
Yeah.
then get a replacement?
As opposed to spending $9 or whatever.
I don't know. I'm also not good with money. I'll just buy. I should just. That would be the smart thing to do. Yeah.
But I'm a time is money guy too.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, oh, I gotta like print a label and like, I'll just throw it out.
I'm really okay.
Well, the Brita should come with a package
Yep.
that you mail it out in,
Yep.
and it should come with two, so that way you always have one
Yep.
immediate. So you're never
Oh,
waiting.
All right, chief strategy officer.
Brita's listening and hiring. I don't need to do this anymore.
Y'all can sponsor.
I'm very aligned with you all, where it's like I put the things in the bin.
Yep.
My garbage area at my building is not separated at all, so it's just like it's going with God.
Yep.
From the little headlines I've taken in, I don't think this is going anywhere. At some point, I thought, okay, they're sending it to China, and maybe China's doing it. I don't know.
I'm coming into this with absolutely zero knowledge about what happens after I do my recycling.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's
this
not
is
your. I mean, you don't
super
work there.
illuminating.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it does make me feel better about buying glass bottles of Coke. You have a plastic bottle of Coke there. It doesn't taste as good and doesn't
No, it
recycle
doesn't.
as well, apparently. But here's an anti-feminist moment, which is to say, I actually really, when I'm in a relationship, don't deal with recycling or trash. I feel like those are man duties in a home. Do we agree?
It certainly
I'm not gonna say
ends up
anything.
being the case in my home.
Right?
So, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, well,
My
yeah.
lips are sealed.
you feel like you're
No,
gonna
it's
be
like I'm not
canceled
getting
for this.
canceled over this thing.
I'll be canceled by my wife. Yeah.
He doesn't want to get canceled from his new Brita job. Brita strategy job.
And then I think we should also say this varies, right? Like city by city and state by state. Like
Yeah.
in New York, I mean, our super, like I've gotten in trouble multiple times for recycling something incorrectly. And then my super will be like, look, if you keep doing this, we're going to get fined.
Yeah, buildings are supposed to get fined for not recycling correctly.
And so now I'm recycling so that he doesn't get fined, not necessarily to save the earth.
I remember there was also some stuff where you're supposed to put all the recycling in a clear bag versus black bags for the trash.
so they can sort through it.
And then, I've heard other people say their buildings are definitely on them about this. And then it obviously varies so much where it's like, this can't be that big of an issue if a lot of buildings aren't doing this.
Yeah.
No, but in other countries all over the world, like it's very in the UK, they will actually fine you if you
really?
don't compost, and like they'll fine you as the homeowner and or the unit. And in Europe, I mean, they're much like I think they're just much better about these kinds of common good problems.
And
like,
the separate bins and stuff too, I've noticed.
or even in
there.
Australia, it's like there's a water shortage. Showers are going to be like 6 minutes. Imagine telling Americans they can only shower for 6 minutes.
Don't tell me that.
We've already been able to shower for
3.
a shorter amount of time than we do. Yeah.
3?
We were all
Not
pissed
for
off.
water, not for
Conservation.
Oh, for
Conservation
antibacterial reasons.
yeah, and just
Health.
Washing away your natural
like what you
oils.
need versus what you want.
That's a good way to put it.
All right.
Like that shower thing just comes up every
Yeah,
episode.
we were so pissed about it. It's clear.
It sounds like we're all aligned, but let's do a vote. Does anyone here think recycling works? And you can add nuance to that.
I would like to believe it's doing something.
But
don't know
in
for
your
sure.
heart of hearts, I throw this out. What's happening to
It's
it?
got to be doing something, right? They're putting it in a different place than your garbage, is what I think is happening.
I think a very small percentage of stuff actually. I think in the beginning when we were like in elementary school and we were recycling, I feel like that was the golden age. I feel like they were really recycling.
Golden age? Or do you
Golden
think that's
age
because
of
you were in
recycling.
middle school?
No, I think that they were actually doing stuff back then.
Was
stuff
that because
actually
Captain
being
Planet
recycled.
was around?
Yeah, Captain
Yeah.
Planet.
Captain Planet, he's our hero. Gonna take pollution down to zero.
I I feel like
Yeah, where is he
He
now?
was doing
I
that.
think the issue is now, back then, not everything was recyclable, and we weren't, we had a limited amount of things that we were recycling. Now, every single thing is recyclable,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
which there's just too much stuff. We're not using this
It's
much
Yeah.
true.
stuff.
When I was a kid, it really felt like just like soda cans.
Yep.
And Santa Claus was alive, guys. I mean, I have to say, I don't know that the technology has gotten worse with time. on
No, I'm not
recycling.
saying it's gotten
But
worse. I
we're-
think we just have more things that we're trying to
more
recycle.
complicated.
Well, we used to recycle all those plastic bags from
That's
supermarkets
true.
and stuff.
That's
I think
true.
it existed. We just weren't the ones consuming them, and so
That's
we
true.
didn't.
That's true as a
But
kid.
I feel like it works with glass and aluminum, but when it comes to plastic, I think it's like I forget the number, and I don't want to scoop your interview.
Please don't.
But like
Yeah.
I feel
I'm editing that out. Everything you just said. Yeah, my guess is material by material. There's a variance, but I think kind of what Devin is saying is because there's so many things we're expected to try to recycle that I think that complicates matters even more.
But when we're kids, I do think I thought recycling was magic. Like I thought if you have sneakers, they will one day become a basketball court, or like if you have a plastic bag, it will one day become a park bench. And like
Yeah.
everything was beautiful because
Yeah.
Captain Planet.
You just put it in the
Yeah.
machine
Yeah.
and it comes out something new.
But I will say this for the purposes of this episode. If it turns out to be the case that this is not really doing anything, I'm going to be writing a very strongly worded letter. Like we are doing so much work at home to Zoran Mumdani.
Oh, okay. All right,
Well, like
Bear.
we're doing so much work at home. I would be devastated to find out it's not really doing anything.
But what if we find out? I think this episode, outside of the laundry episode, has the biggest chance to change my personal behavior.
Yeah.
Because if it turns out it's not doing anything, then I'm not recycling
what are you gonna
anything
do?
anymore.
What?
I'm just gonna throw it in the garbage.
It's all going to be in the black bag.
Yeah,
and they're
it's
not
gonna
going
be
to open it to
black-pilled.
check.
Yeah.
Not getting
Wait,
fined.
maybe you should cover your ears for the rest of this episode. Will you stop buying stuff? That's, I think,
Well,
like
that's
the.
going to be my story when my super comes around. I'm going to be like, actually, I don't purchase anything to recycle. That's why you're not seeing any recycling.
I'm a real environmentalist who writes strongly worded letters to the mayor on Tuesdays.
Well, why don't we answer some of these questions? After the break, we're going to hear from an advocate against the big plastic industry.
Oh.
Ooh.
All right, fellas, I need you to help me with a problem that I got. Usually we're the ones helping other people with their problems, but I'm about to go abroad and I want to watch Met games. Noah, how can I watch them?
That's a tough one. Maybe get a really large telescope.
I don't think that's the best way to do it. Manny, do you have any solutions on how I can watch Mets games abroad?
I think I've got a slightly more practical solution for you, Devin. If you use NordVPN, you'll be able to change the location of your laptop's IP address and watch the content with no problem.
What about my privacy online? I'm worried someone's watching me.
First of all, no one is watching you, Noah. But in case someone was watching you, NordVPN provides you with privacy online, leaving no digital footprint by hiding your IP address. It's like wearing an invisibility cloak while you're surfing the web.
Sounds comfy.
So, Manny, I've heard about these VPNs and how they're super slow. How do I make sure my internet is not throttling?
If you want to use a VPN without slowing down your internet, Devin, you're going to want to use NordVPN because whenever I use it, I don't see any buffering or lagging while I'm streaming my favorite content.
How do I get NordVPN?
Devin, if you or our listeners want to get the best discount off of your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/NST. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan, and there's no risk because Nord has a 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. That's nordvpn.com/NST.
We are back.
I'm Manny.
Noah.
Devin.
Am I allowed to say my name this
Now
time?
you are, yeah.
So, I'm Nayeema.
And we are figuring out the truth behind recycling.
Wow.
Is it a lie? I spoke to someone who's done a lot of work on this.
Okay.
So my name is Davis Allen. I'm an environmental historian by training. I work as an investigative researcher at the Center for Climate Integrity, where we provide support for communities that are holding big oil accountable through litigation.
So Davis Allen has been working on this for years. His group has put out a bunch of really in-depth reports investigating plastics and recycling and kind of some of the, what they would say are lies of the big oil industry. We're mainly focusing on plastics recycling for the purpose of this. The main kind of thesis is that recycling as we know it is basically essentially a PR campaign made by and sponsored by big oil.
Wow.
Plastics come from oil, and basically this is a way that they can kind of clean up their image by saying, hey, this isn't just like trash, it's going to be reused and make you feel better about throwing the stuff in the garbage.
Who do you think paid for all those ads you saw as a kid when you're hunky-dory recycling?
I didn't know at all.
We need to check the credits to Captain Planet while we're at it, to be honest. I don't know.
It's
That would be
greenwashing.
heartbreaking. If there was something sinister behind Captain Planet.
I don't know.
I think they're...
Well, yeah, well, I will look at that. Quick side note here. I did look into it, and Captain Planet is innocent, so don't worry about that.
But greenwashing.
Yeah.
I didn't know about this.
So first, I opened up with a big one. I asked Davis, what are the most common misconceptions about recycling?
That it does anything.
Yeah, that it works.
Yeah, that it exists.
I think the biggest misconception really is the idea that because of recycling, a disposable consumer economy is not a major environmental problem, because it perpetuates a feeling among people using these products that there isn't really a major environmental impact, because whatever the product is just getting cycled back through a system and turning into a new product. And that's unfortunately just not how recycling works in the vast majority of cases. There are some materials that are recycled that are much more efficiently recycled. So something like aluminum, a much higher percentage of the aluminum actually gets turned into a new aluminum product. But even in that kind of case, where 99% of the material is getting turned into a new can or whatever, there are still a lot of environmental costs in that process that make it far less efficient than some kind of reusable approach. So basically, I think the biggest misconception is that the whole idea of a circle being not a problem, when really any disposable product is ultimately more of a straight line where you're having a lot of environmental costs in that process.
So basically, there's a misconception that recycling is offsetting some of the more gross things we do with consumer products. But in reality, it's just like like a drop in the bucket compared to...
Yeah, and basically like kind of what Nayeema was saying, where we have this image from middle school where it's like you put the thing in the bin and then it comes out as a new product. And totally...
Magic.
You don't lose anything. Yeah, just like this perfect one-to-one replacement. That's just not true based on the costs and other factors of actually doing the recycling.
So the biggest problem with things not getting recycled is just that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to recycle the vast majority of plastics. Recycled plastic, once you have it as a new sort of material, a new raw form of plastic to be turned into something, is pretty low quality. It's well suited for things like trash cans, ironically, recycling bins, plastic crate that holds materials that are getting shipped, things like that. But it's not the kind of plastic that is useful for most applications. The reality is when we're using all these plastic products, they have pretty particular specifications for what they need it to be able to do. And recycled plastic doesn't meet most of those specifications.
So that's basically how recycling does or doesn't work
How
these days.
demotivating.
It's a scam.
I did this story for the New York Times. It was like 2019, but it's like the cost of making a new plastic bag from like a plastic bag is much higher than just making a new plastic bag. So why would a company then make a plastic bag from an old plastic bag or whatever the case may
I
be?
see. There's no incentive there.
So yeah, it enables consumption because we feel so virtuous. We have like a little halo. This guy is going to take the halo off our head.
Truly, yeah. I asked what are plastics and where do they come
Yeah,
from?
that I don't know actually.
Plastics come from many different raw materials. Some of the materials are natural elements like water and air. Some are growing things like corn and potatoes. Others are minerals such as oil, coal, and limestone. From these various raw materials, chemists derive many different chemicals, which, when combined properly, will form plastics.
There's often the misconception that plastic is one thing. In reality, there are thousands of different chemicals that make up plastics. So they're really an extremely broad category of materials that happen to share some key characteristics, I'll say. In particular, the vast majority, something like 99% currently, are made of fossil fuels. And they're engineered to address lots of particular use cases. But yeah, they're a really wide, diverse group of materials.
But they just make it, like they create it in a lab.
I guess
Yeah.
so.
Of
It's like
different plastics.
synthesized or
Yeah,
something.
essentially.
From oil downstream stuff that they
Yeah.
don't need to like pump into the vehicle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, this is a dream of the future. Yet out of such dreams has come all that we call progress. So in the years ahead, dreams like this and many more will become realities.
So now we're going to kind of go back and do a little history lesson on plastics becoming disposable. So I was curious, like, when did people even start to care about single-use plastics and waste? Disposable plastics were introduced post-World War II. Before that, plastic was largely seen as a more durable material, so products like radios. Then the plastics industry realized they would make more money if they made disposable products instead of ones you buy and keep for 20 years.
Yeah.
So
We need you to buy it again, please.
yeah, so a lot of that is packaging and other single-use items. So like before that, grocery stores, that sort of thing had bulk things and you would go fill up a bag and then take it away instead of individually wrapped pieces. The industry exploded and it totally changed our consumer economy. Things that had no packaging previously now did. Here's one example of that shift.
In the report, we talk about an instance in the 50s in which many infants choked on plastic dry cleaner bags, were killed by plastic dry cleaner bags in a single year. And that was a particularly interesting example where you see in a one moment in time, it go from a durable concept of plastics to a disposable one, because you literally had DuPont, who was making the bags, telling people, you can keep this bag, you can do all kinds of things with it. You can cover your sofa with it or whatever. And then the plastics industry launched this public relations campaign to try to counteract the terrible publicity from all of these children dying. Their PR campaign was, you've got to throw these things away. They blamed the mothers explicitly of the children who had died for not throwing away the plastics after they had told them you can keep using them. So that's a particularly interesting example where you see that transition. But the public backlash against disposable plastics really began especially around 1970.
Good evening. A unique day in American history is ending, a day set aside for a nationwide outpouring of mankind seeking its own survival. Earth Day, a day dedicated to enlisting all the citizens of a bountiful country in the common cause of saving life from the deadly byproducts of that bounty, the fouled skies, the filthy waters, the littered earth.
The first Earth Day was a catalyst for so many environmental movements, but it was especially significant for the plastic system, where people recognize this stuff is ending up in the environment. And it was the first backlash against disposable plastics. That was the catalyst for the industry trying to figure out, what are we going to do? How are we going to resolve this new public relations nightmare? And they initially go to landfilling and incineration, and then there's looking into recycling right from the beginning. We have docs from the early 1970s where the Society of the Plastics Industry, which was working on behalf of all of the big plastic producers, was trying to figure out, is recycling feasible, basically? Is recycling something that could offer a solution? They didn't really promote it early on because their initial finding was, no, it's not a good solution for plastics. So it really only came later that they began to promote it as a solution.
So in short, it's basically like Earth Day happens. People are like, hey, this seems pretty bad. Then they're like, okay, we'll just burn it all. And everyone's like, cool. And then after like 20 years, people are like, oh, maybe burning stuff isn't so good.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, okay, we'll recycle. And that's kind of lines up with us growing up with all this recycling propaganda.
Yeah.
90s.
Prime
What?
recycling propaganda time.
The baby story is so
Oh my God.
sad.
Yeah.
I'm sure as a new father also.
Yeah, oh my God. I mean, every day I'm like, am I going to kill this baby by accident? I can't believe. So what is he, dry cleaning bags, like the bags
those
your suit
big-
would come back in?
Yeah, like those big ones, those long
Wow.
ones.
But y'all don't remember when we were younger, it was a big thing of our parents being like, never put a
Oh, yeah.
plastic
Yes,
bag over
exactly.
your head.
Yeah, no,
And
it
I'm
was-
assuming
Absolutely.
it's
It
because
must
of
be
this,
from
Yeah.
that story, those stories.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I can't believe like this industry is just like surviving and riding
I
or
know.
dying through like baby killings. Like
Every
what?
development in the industry is a like a PR move.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
To fix some previous mistake.
Okay, so we heard a lot about what plastic is, how we got so much of it, and how we landed where we are today, as far as recycling being a big sort of solution to deal with it. After the break, Davis is going to tell us why he thinks big recycling is basically a fantasy made up to guilt trip little people like you and me to take responsibility for a disposable consumption culture that's mostly out of our control. So now we're going to dive into Davis's main thesis, that recycling is a way to push a narrative of guilt onto us, the consumer, rather than looking towards the big oil companies actually producing and profiting from all of this plastic waste. And remember, this is just part one. In part two, we'll visit a recycling plant to see how recycling actually works on the ground and hear from the pro-recycling side. But for now, more of my conversation with Davis Allen from the Center for Climate Integrity. It seems basically they landed on like we can basically guilt people and the public into blaming themselves for plastic waste. If that's true, can you talk about how we got to kind of that point from where we were in the early 70s there?
I think that is true. I think that's the exact trajectory of what happened, really. They knew that recycling was not viable for the vast majority of plastics. And they knew that it wasn't a solution. Even when plastics can be recycled, that process degrades the quality. And so it's not something that can keep happening over and over again, like with some other materials. It's something that represents a very limited strategy to deal with plastic, especially when we are knowingly producing so much plastic that is meant to be used once and then end up in the waste system. So they understood all of those problems. They were very open internally within the industry, recognizing that these things would prevent plastic recycling from existing on a wide scale and certainly solving the problem of the plastic waste crisis, even at that early stage. But shifting the blame to individual consumers was a really effective way of taking attention off of the producers, off of the industry that was producing all the plastic, and creating a personal responsibility narrative in which people felt it was their job to solve this problem. That process of shifting blame to the consumers was so effective because people want to do right by the environment, right? They want to behave in a way that feels sustainable and feels in alignment with their values and things. And the recycling campaigns really tapped directly into that impulse and took advantage of them to make it seem like an individual person putting their plastic item in the bin was resolving the deeper contradiction that of course, recycling can do nothing to address. Whether they were targeting local municipalities, convincing them to set up recycling programs that they knew would not be economically sustainable, whether they were creating sponsored materials for classrooms to basically advertise recycling to kids. As somebody who grew up in the 90s, I remember vividly being in elementary school and consuming all kinds of stuff telling me about the value of recycling. And I ate it up. And it has been a really weird feeling to go back and see this stuff as an adult and realize that it was made by DuPont or the American Plastics Council or any number of different companies and groups, and was, again, explicitly targeting that impulse to take care of the environment and to do our best. I've been amazed in my own experience since we published this report. So many people come up to me and I feel are basically like confessing their plastic use to me and telling me how bad they feel about using plastics. And I'm like, none of us can avoid using plastics. They have made it virtually impossible to not rely upon plastics every day. The vast majority of these things don't need to be plastic, but it remains a really effective business model to make people feel bad about it while also continuing to produce endless amounts of it.
To be honest, reading the report made me feel better because it's like, okay, well, this is it's not all my fault. Backwards away, it's kind of like, okay, like I know I don't sort perfectly, but it's out of my hands.
I think that should be the takeaway, really. Of course, it's incredibly demoralizing to realize how we have been lied to and manipulated and all of these things. But at the same time, it's, you see how this stuff happens. You see the way that they were talking to each other at industry conferences and things. This is not the fault of the people using the plastic in the vast majority of cases. I mean, there's just nothing you can really do. And that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do anything, that we should just give up and become nihilists about it. In my own life, I have still adjusted some of my behaviors and I try to reduce my plastic usage in various ways. But I also recognize that's mostly for me. That's mostly because of the way that it makes me feel about it, not the fact that it actually is contributing very much, because these companies are making just ungodly amounts of plastic, and we're not part of that in any way. The recycling thing is a distraction. It's not anything to do with the actual problem.
I mean, there you go.
That's a good word for it. That's a better word than con, actually.
Yeah,
it's a distraction. That's a really good
Look
word.
over here.
Yeah.
And I feel like you see that so much, especially with any climate related things. Like think about flying. It's like, okay, I could not take a flight, my 2 flights a year that I take. Meanwhile, it's like people in charge of these things are flying every day.
Yeah.
The carbon offsets, you can just buy carbon offsets. That seems like a distraction too.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
And it's like someone making money. Why am I paying more money to offset what?
Yeah.
Like,
why me?
Yeah, it's like when they tell you to, not use your air conditioner. And it's like, okay, I can see the argument here, but also there's all these gigantic buildings in Manhattan that are running all 24/7. It's like maybe we should start with someone else.
but that's different even because I actually do some of those things because I feel like, okay, if everyone were to do this action, then this thing would be.
Right.
This is like, even if you do this action is dumb. So you're just wasting your time doing this action.
This is even worse. Yeah.
Which, to be clear, you should still recycle, especially glass, aluminum, especially plastic bottles that are of the recycling kind. But but it's actually just like wasting my time and making me feel good and letting me continue to purchase, which is so bad.
Yeah. There's no real way to avoid plastics efficiently.
Although, do you think if we made a plastic-free town, it would be a really people would want to move there? Should we do
an
that?
Autonomous zone.
Some people would want to move there.
I think some people would want to live in a plastic-free zone for their health and well-being and for their virtuosity. We could create a little plastic-free
or at least
retreat.
a neighborhood.
One of the bigger questions is just how much stuff that we quote unquote recycle actually gets recycled. So that would be the recycling rate. is the term they use
Oh,
to
God.
study this. So first,
Give me at least 10%. I'll be happy.
here's a definition of recycling rate, and then what the actual recycling rate is for the United States.
A recycling rate is the percentage of plastic that is entering the waste system that is getting recycled, i.e., in our case, almost all mechanically recycled. So that means grinding and shredding the plastic down into small bits and cycling it through a system in which it gets basically melted down and turned into a new plastic product. Yeah, it's the percentage of the plastic entering the waste stream. So it's not new plastic that's being produced because we don't want to count durable plastics against that recycling rate. It's only plastic that's entering the waste stream.
For plastics, what's the current recycling rate in the U.S.?
For plastics, the recycling rate is close to 5 to 6%. The highest the plastics recycling rate has ever been was 9%. But at that point, it was a little bit deceptive because it counted a lot of plastics that were being shipped to China to be recycled, but there was a lot of plastic being shipped to China that was never going to get recycled. They have the same sort of economic limitations that we do, and that number was deceptively high for a bit.
So it's more like it's not recycled, but it's more out of our hands.
Right. It provided a very easy way for us to pretend that things are being recycled in the same way that people talk about wish cycling on like an individual level, putting something in the bin, thinking maybe it'll get recycled. We were doing that as a country, engaging in some pretty major waste imperialism, and we still do. It's just not to China anymore because China decided that they don't want to accept our trash anymore. The rate currently in the United States is probably around 5 or 6%.
And Davis went on to tell me that certain plastic products have a higher recycling rate. So a PET bottle, think of a typical soda bottle, is recycled at around 33%, which is on the higher end of things. Whereas other types like polypropylene, aka plastic number 5, might be as low as 1% or even less.
Wait, I'm so confused. They wanted to make up a number of how much they were recycling, and the highest they could make up was 9%.
That's like basically giving yourself like all the advantages of being like, okay, well, let's say this and let's say that.
Yeah,
It's
that
only
counts.
But
That
like
counts.
9% is the highest they could eke out. Like if you're gonna tell a lie, you
bad.
don't want to be like 99%. I mean, like
Crazy. Before you played that clip, all I was asking for was 10% recyclable rate, meaning
You kiss
10%
those
of
days
the
goodbye.
things I recycle is actually going to get recycled. I couldn't even get 10%.
well, that's not. That depends on like the average math of what you consume. But
Yeah,
the
that's
the
true.
plastics are fewer
plastics,
than,
that's right, that's
and
right.
some of the plastics
Yeah.
are 33%.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
You could make your way to
use a lot of
10%.
these.
Yeah, if you're drinking a lot
No, I
of
usually
water
get a-
bottles
a
or
Do
glass.
Coke
do some
bottles.
service for the country.
I can't believe that 5 to 6%.
Yeah.
Yeah, of
U.S.
everything.
numbers.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, when I heard that, I was pretty shocked. It's just like it's
kind
so
of
low that it's like I
demoralizing,
can't believe
yeah.
how much time we've spent
Yep.
thinking about this. Yeah, and then Davis mentions the incineration. Some
Yes.
countries counting that as recycling. It's like, well, we got rid of it.
Yeah.
We turned it into something.
Recycling
Yeah.
it into toxic
Yeah.
fumes.
I actually felt sad for the plastic as he was talking about it. Like it was pretty dehumanizing. The plastic, plasticizing. Like they crush it and they do this.
And Nayeema, you asked me earlier about if doing this interview changed my habits,
Yes.
and the answer is no.
But did you think about changing them?
Not really. I mean,
Difficult because changing your habits would not do anything.
I guess it
do much.
I kind of knew that when your answer to reading the report was like, oh, thank God, it's not my problem.
yeah, it's
I like that confession.
I like reusable items when I can, but
Remember when
I'm a
the-
small man in a big world. That's my knockoff of your show.
Smart girl, that much.
Small
Small
man,
man, the big world. You know what I think you can use this like reduce, reuse, recycle is like in dating. So you should reduce the number of people you date. You can reuse them. You can go back to your exes.
I don't know if you should do that.
Break class in case of emergency, and then you should recycle them because like I try this so much when like it doesn't work out well. I'll be like, oh, but I have a friend that I think, and people don't like that. They get
wait, you yourself will say, hey, I know
This
I
one's
don't
not
like
for me.
you, but like
No, I
you
don't
should date my friend.
I say like it doesn't seem like this will be a thing, but I have a friend because I actually think like
It's
your
kind of nice
friends-
because it's like it's still a stamp of approval.
Yeah, it's a stamp of approval, but I don't think people like it. But like,
Yeah.
I like that.
And it's also like actually might work out because your friend is kind of. I've always thought the idea that you can't date like your friend's exes
Yeah.
is kind of screwed up because your friend is like you with a tweak,
Yeah,
and like maybe
yeah,
that
that's
tweak is
true.
what's needed to like make that
Yeah, like you're
relationship
probably
work.
someone
So who was
compatible.
upset? The person that you were saying that to, you're breaking up with,
The
or
guy.
your friend?
No,
I
we'd
see, I
all,
see, I see.
I'd already said it. I waited like 2 extra like
It's not
weeks, and then I
immediate,
was like,
yeah.
I had this thought.
This
But
should
obviously,
be
I
in
had
the-
a thought
this
the
should be
first
in the
day. I was
bio.
like, they should be together.
It's an interesting
So I'm
concept.
saying-
yeah. So take it away from the. We're gonna take that away from the
Here's
plastic.
the takeaways. Yeah.
Just branded on men, single men. All
Okay, we should
We're
try
gonna use
that.
it in the dating world.
Yeah.
I mean, I bet the efficiency rate would be way higher than 5%.
I'm telling you, reduce, reuse, recycle your men. Do that.
All right, that's-
And you know what the thing is, because like plastic gets less good when you recycle it, but like men get more good after we date
That's
them.
true because you make them better.
Everybody gets better after a relationship. Men,
Yeah.
women, whatever. Like
Well,
it's like
I don't know if everybody does.
ran through.
That's the idea.
oh, you learn something.
Hopefully.
There should be like a cooling off period.
Cool down.
Exit crazy ex-girlfriend ratio come to. Yeah. Anyways.
Okay, so that's it for part 1. Now scroll down and click on part 2 to hear the rest. In part 2, we hear more about what happens to plastic when we put it in the bin. We'll go on a field trip to a recycling center to see what's going on.
It looked like some shit out of like Futurama.
Yeah, and talk to a representative there to see if recycling is actually a total scam or not.
So there's this statistic that everyone loves to like run at me with their hands flailing in the air. Only 9% of plastic gets recycled. So I just want to explain that statistic because it's a bit misunderstood.
This is just the beginning.
No such thing.
No Such Thing is a production of Kaleidoscope Content. Our executive producers are Kate Osborne and Mangesh Hattikudur. The show is created by Manny Fidel, Noah Friedman, and Devin Joseph. Theme and credits song by Manny Fidel. Mixing by Steve Bone. Thank you so much to our guests, Nayeema Raza and Davis Allen. Make sure you check out Naeema's podcast. It's called Smart Girl Dumb Questions. It's very funny, very smart, and very good. You can go to climateintegrity.org to see the reports Davis has been working on. Visit nosuchthing.show to subscribe to our newsletter for links to research and more. And lastly, we want to hear from you. We made a survey to get feedback about what you like about the show, what you don't like about the show, and a lot more. You can find the link in our show notes and on our newsletter, so please let us know what you think. And lastly, don't forget to jump into part 2 as soon as you can. Thanks.
No such thing.